Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Freedom Exchange Sunday edition. Do I sound like a
Yes.
newswoman?
Yeah, you do.
Welcome. We're excited to be here. It feels like it was a long time ago since we, I think, had Mother's Day in the middle of
Yeah,
that.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Well, welcome back. We have a really awesome guest today that I just really enjoyed our little chat with him just now that we had. And he's stuck out in the garage. That's where his kids put him when he's in trouble. So
He's not in
the
trouble.
he's in the garage waiting for us right now. Let's get right to it. So, want to talk
Okay.
about your things?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Christy.
Oh yeah,
Let me
that.
say that this is Allison, and I just want to highlight an organization that we like to do. This is the Peace House, which is here in Ashland, and they are a nonprofit that promotes conflict resolution. We like that, right? Social and economic justice and the inherent dignity of all people, as well as protecting the natural resources. And so, what we love about them, they have something called the Rogel Liberation Library. It was founded in 2018 to share their love of books and reading with people in our nation's prisons. So, their mission is to provide quality books and reading material free of charge to incarcerated people to foster knowledge, communication, connection, personal development, and well being. So, they send hundreds of books every month into prison for free.
Awesome.
So that is great. So I just want to say thank you to them. And do you want me to say what the Freedom Exchange
Sure.
is?
I have a question though. Did you read a lot of books when you were in?
I read so many books that it's almost PTSD for me to read right now.
Oh, because you spent a lot of time reading.
Yes,
Yeah.
like a lot of time reading. I read the whole Game of Thrones series. Do you know how big those books are?
No.
They're inches, like huge.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
I'm glad that you had access to that.
Yeah, and one thing I loved is the big picture books of all over the world, so I can dream that I was there, but I wasn't. Anyway, the Freedom Exchange, if you guys haven't been here before, welcome. Thanks for being here with us. So the Freedom Exchange was birthed out of a desire to combat stigma, have conversations with people that are impacted by the criminal punishment system, we like to say. And so we want to amplify the voices of people who have been through hard things and are coming out, transforming their lives and other people's lives. So we're super glad you're here. Adam is a guest of ours. He's in North Dakota, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so we get to meet him and all his peeps. So
yes.
Yeah.
So Adam, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Adam has founded a nonprofit called the F5 Project, and he is a
F as in felon.
F as in felon, because he's a 5-time felon. Interesting though, he has not been to prison. He's just been to jail many a times. So that was an interesting, we just assume if you're a 5-time felon, but we'll talk about more of that. And the F5 Project is this awesome situation where people that are coming out of prison, so the reentry situation can be very difficult, as we've talked about with many of our guests, and they just cling on to people coming out of prison and give them opportunities and education to get transportation, housing, peer support,
probably driver's
employment,
license,
all the things. And they just have grace and no judgment for whatever the thing was. If people are willing to put in the work, then they show up for them, which is partly why we chose him to be on the show, which we'll get into. So I'll hold that thought. Let us invite Adam Martin from North Dakota. Oh, I have to do this little thing. Excuse me. Let's bring him in.
We're always just right on point, but we're close.
Oh my goodness. Our tech support, we're getting good. Hi, Adam.
Hi.
Where are you right now? What part of the house?
I'm in the garage that I just put in new light bulbs, so I'm comfortable here.
You look great.
Yeah. If you see, I don't know how to turn off the blur, but there's a big ass hockey net behind me.
Oh, well, I was gonna say the blur was a cool tech thing. We wouldn't know how to do that. So.
I know how to get it on, but I don't know how to turn it off.
That's funny. Well, welcome. We just did a brief intro that you're in North Dakota in the garage right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's. I mean, people probably think it's really. I mean, it's 75 degrees right now, so it's super nice.
Wow.
We're getting that too after an So much rain,
Yeah.
so much.
Today was a summer day. It was amazing. So yeah, we're happy.
So you're having it too. Good. Then you're probably in a good mood like we are because the sun is out and we're super happy. Although it's bedtime almost there for you. Well, it's later there.
Yeah, 7 o'clock. Kids go to bed at around 8, so I
Oh,
got
we'll get you done just
No,
in
you're fine. You're
time.
fine. No.
So we have an interesting, I wouldn't say vetting process, but there's definitely some laws of attraction to who we pick to be guests on our show. And it's becoming kind of a pattern where it's when we find somebody that is kind of hustling to make their world happen, that's doing their own work and that's maybe gone through some hard things and they're ready to let that elevate them and not keep them down. We definitely get attracted to that. And you fell right smack in the middle of that one.
And you said yes when I asked. So thank you for that.
That's always a good.
Yeah.
They gotta say yes.
Yes, they have to say yes. And usually they do, which is
Christy's
awesome.
also kind of persistent. So even if you would have said no a few times, she wouldn't have stopped.
I would have said, are you sure?
Are you really, really sure? We're super fun. So I thought that was a great way to start this whole thing because when we talked the other day, you mentioned this quote that we've kind of been ruminating on that we really loved, which was hustle beats talent when talent doesn't hustle. Did I say that right?
Yeah, so you said it right. Yeah.
So we kind of broke that down and we're like, okay, wait, what are we saying? So hustle beats talent when talent doesn't hustle. And even sometimes we don't have talent or we haven't developed our talent or been aware of it. Or afraid of it. But if we have the hustle, we can develop it and we can embrace that. But the hustle really needs to be there either way, talent or no talent.
With anybody in the whole planet, if they want to do something.
And I think, and you can share about this when we talk about F5, but it sounds like what you do is if people are willing to show up and do the work and the hustle and have some grit and some perseverance, then you're more than happy to work it with that. But if you're trying harder than someone else is for themselves, it's a little harder to want it more than they want it.
Yeah, I'd like to, we also take into consideration mental health, right? So it's, early on, it was kind of a pull yourself up by your bootstraps, we'll help you get the boots. And, but there's a lot of people that don't even know like where the boots are once they get them. Right. And so like meeting people where they're at, any kind of effort is good effort. Right. Because some guys will come in to the houses or we'll meet them in the jail or the prisons and they just come out and they're just flying. Right. Like they just got it. It clicked. Right. They don't have as much mental health struggle as other people. They made a bad choice or, maybe they did make a bad choice. Maybe it was a lifelong of crime, whatever. It doesn't, by the time they get to us, we're not asking them what they were in prison for, right? Like we're just asking what they want to do when they get out. And so we've really ramped up our mental health services because, like during the pandemic and fentanyl has gotten, meth literally changes your body chemistry, like everything about you. So like I mean it when we say we meet people where they're at, and the most recent one for me is I was like out campaigning, or not even campaigning, I was just putting signs up with my name on it because I'm running for a spot on the commission, and I had to be somewhere like in 5 minutes to drop off the sign, get some signatures, stuff like that. And as I'm walking out of the gas station, I could just feel this guy as I was walking out. He had a backpack on. He was standing at the door of the gas station. And as I walked past him, I could just tell like something's going on. But I got somewhere to be. Right. And so I'm walking to my truck and I start my truck and I'm about to back out. And I can't not see if he needs help. And my whole staff is like that, right? They're just present, like they see things that other people don't see. Or if they see like other people, if they see it, it doesn't pull at them like it does with us. So I go back and I talk to him and I was like, man, I'll give you a ride wherever you need to go. Like, I'll help you. This is who I am. And it was like across town. In the opposite direction of where I needed to go and where I needed to be in 5 minutes. And so I was like, well, screw it. Like this is the type of, like, if I get elected, like, this is the type of stuff that I hope my commissioner would do.
Yeah.
Like, I hope he would take the time to talk to the guy at the gas station as much as he talks to the governor, or whatever. And so gave him a ride across town, and I never, like, there's no happy ending. There's no ending to the story. I haven't seen him since or whatever. But I learned a lesson that day, that the day that I'm not stopping to talk to that guy is the day that I shouldn't be in charge of F5 anymore. Like, that's the type of, like, if I'm going to preach that, I have to do it. And it's not even why I did it. I felt compelled. Like, I wasn't sitting there thinking, well, I preached this, I better go talk to him. It was like, this guy could die.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going on in his life, but after getting to know him, like, he had just got out of jail. Like, and so I think empaths, like, have a superpower that if they just slow down and talk to people and meet people where they're at, maybe we'll get some hustle. Maybe not. If we do, awesome. If we don't, we'll just wait a little bit longer. Right.
I love that perspective on it also, of not being frustrated. I mean, not that we don't struggle with frustration with people that we're really wanting to fight for, but also allowing that, like, it has to be on their terms also. They're a human, it's their life, it's their decision, and we can only show up.
Yeah, we don't know where someone's at, so we meet them where they are. That's very powerful.
And not to maybe and put it where it goes inside of us, like you said, as an empath, and put it where it goes inside of you. Like, I want to show up for this person. This person's going to have to somewhat show up for themselves. And I can still do my day. I can still show up at home for my family. And I think there are people that have a hard time compartmentalizing a little bit, so that they can be healthy themselves with, I mean, this is you work around.
Yeah, I know. Whenever you talk, I think, wow, that's exactly what we do. It's like, whatever you need, wherever you are, corner, bike path, prison, cop car, what do you need? And we'll help you do whatever that is. And it's a little challenge, because you have an idea about where someone should be, maybe, but that's not us. That's not my journey, and that's their journey, and it's a place when you live from your heart. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know, a lot of people that do.
I mean, as long as you don't have, the people who struggle the most with this type of work are the people who have expectations, right?
Yes, so I have expectations sometimes, and I'm learning to let it go.
Yeah, well, you have to ask, like, why? Why do I have expectations?
Yes.
And usually, from what I've seen, is it has something to do with a character defect, right? Something along the lines of pride, ego, competitiveness. Maybe sometimes it's trauma, right? Like, sometimes you go down the path of me or whatever. Like, my dad left at a very early age. I was 13, like the age my son is right now. And I look at my son right now and I see him like, man, all I ever wanted was my dad to come to my baseball games. I wanted him to watch me win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then when I get into this world and I have some of that unresolved trauma or unresolved whatever, and so character defect is just a term. I don't mean people are defective by any means, but so that's why I'm like, you have to ask why, because if the why has anything to do with you, you're going to fail that person
all the time.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking, often my expectations come from my own desire to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was very profound, Allison.
Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't.
I just was thinking about, as you were talking, Adam, like, when am I the most disappointed? And it's just when I want something to be different, but so that I'm more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be as simple as, like, you don't, like, not you, but people in general don't feel comfortable when they're around people who are in chaos, right? Because you're probably an empath, and you like, whatever they're building, like, emotionally, you're drawing off of it.
Yes.
Right. And so usually people, like, make the meeting quick, or they're already looking around, or whatever the case may be, right? Or they're just judging it, or they're going to try and find a solution as fast as possible, right? But it has nothing to do with the person across the table. It usually has to do with something that I'm uncomfortable with.
I think if we can,
I should say.
I'm just asked the question, but I'm just thinking, it's what you said it a little bit ago about just slow down. We are all moving at such a high pace. I am the queen of high speed. I mean, I move through my life all the time at a high speed, and it's about slowing down and paying attention and being observant and aware of your surroundings and the people. And I am aware of that, but I understand what it's like to just go, 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 go. And then we can ask ourselves, why are we moving so fast? You know, what is the reason why we can't see or speak or approach a person or a situation that seems like uncomfortable or unfamiliar to us, and show up just human to human, just show up for
And
somebody.
I'm sure Adam and his staff are probably really good at that, slowing down and taking, the time for each person coming out of jail or prison.
What was the question?
I don't remember. I'm not going to
Well, they're probably pretty good at it because like 75% of our staff's in recovery. Right. And so they're all like
empathetic.
They're all sponsored, right? They all have like peers in their life that are, traveling the same journey. Plus now they get to benefit from that at work because everybody at work, like, man, I've had people in like staff that they just like, we don't have a high turnover. We've like been in business for 5 years, and I can probably name 2 people that have been fired in 5 years and maybe 5 that have quit. And we have 40 staff.
That's amazing.
That says something about you, Adam.
Yeah,
obviously people leadership and feel good being around you. And just like that example you gave earlier, when the rubber meets the road, you show up, and that's the integrity you bring to the organization and the expectation you have. It's just good. It's all you. Good job.
Wow. It's a bunch of us.
Well, we've all, but it starts at the top, right? Like you have an expectation of what your organization puts out and how you show up for people and how you love on people. So it has to come from you. But
I appreciate that.
Another word that I read about and that comes from you too, and kind of touched on it, is the word stigma. We had a guest a long time ago who I love so much that said, you never want someone to take the worst day of your life, the worst, did I ever say that? Or was that earlier we were saying that? The worst decision you've ever made, and have it be a life sentence for the rest of your life. If you're willing to learn and grow and change and forgive and be forgiven, like there's nothing that should stop you from thriving in your life, no matter what the thing was. But something about incarceration has its own special stigma that sticks on people. And I was sort of trying to figure out, what is it about incarceration that gives us this license, we think, to put the stigma on somebody forever, when there's a lot of labels that we all probably wear all over us that we either can hide or that don't really last a lifetime. But something about incarceration does. So the stigma thing, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I've never actually said this out loud, but I've always like believed that I'm like a philosopher of like some of these ideas, right? So like stigma, it's subjective, right? That's probably the hardest part about stigma, because it creates the most hostility, is that one person's idea of stigma is another person's like subpar kind of, it's not a big deal, right?
Explain that to me.
There's a spectrum, right? So there's things in my life that I probably stigmatize that I don't even know, right? Maybe bad drivers. God, they drive me crazy. I could probably build out a case that they are the worst thing that's ever happened in this planet, is bad drivers, right? And, someone who's a mediocre driver might not think that they're a bad idea until they're affected by them. You know what I mean? And so for me, like I've never like bank robbers. Okay, they robbed a bank, right? But if a person's in that bank when it was robbed, now they've personalized it, right? Or if a person's at a bank next door and that other one gets robbed, they personalize it, right? And so a lot of stigma out there that I see is usually been afflicted somehow, some way along the lines that it creates even more, right? And so incarceration's like easy, because they've been deemed as doing something wrong, when we live in a nation where we're built on the concept that you have to do everything right. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so
Nobody does.
nobody does.
Right.
Like,
Mm.
this is, I don't know if you guys are religious or not. I'm not, I wouldn't even say that I'm super religious, but I think one of the
Spiritual.
greatest, like, whether people believe in this person or not, one of the greatest criminal justice reformers of all time, based on his words, was Jesus, right? Like, like, some of the, oh man, like when the Pharisees and the priests were like, judge this person, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
right? And he was just like, what about your heart?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, he totally bottomed out everybody and made everything ground level just by that one statement. Because if you think of it, like, imagine, like, if you had a TV on your forehead, and everything that you've ever thought was projected on that screen, right? And now you're going to make a comparison between the things you think and the things that they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I mean, that it's subjective, is that people want grace, but they want justice on others.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I've seen I watched a guy one time come after me on Facebook just about like sex offenders and rapists and murders, right? They usually go to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
And just harping on me about it, like, why would you help them? Why would you do, blah blah blah? And I'm like, I because I think I'm called to do this work, right? Like, I really do. That I think that there's supposed to be someone on earth that's not asking, people what's on their background, and they're just helping them. Like,
Mhm.
Mm.
and he's like, you're the worst thing that ever happened. 2 months later, he got charged with a sex crime.
I was gonna say that's always what it is.
Yeah.
Usually, when somebody else is mirroring that thing that you're hiding, that's when you're judging it because everything should be a so what. What
Hmm.
someone's doing, it should be a so what. But if it's something that gets you, that means it's mirroring what you have inside and don't want to show.
Yeah,
Thank you for
it's
yeah.
quite possible. I think, to hammer like down on the philosophy of this, is that, like, usually stigma entails that, like, people need someone to hate, right? Like, that's where we're at in the world today, right? They need the negativity. Like, I heard it in that movie Life with Eddie Murphy, right? Was it Life? It was, no, the one where he was a spiritual guru, whatever that movie was. And he
Um,
said that our TVs are like, if there's a TV of a birth and there's a TV of a head rolling down the freeway, people will choose every single time to watch the head going down the freeway.
No, I won't.
I won't, but it's true. People
Yeah. I
do,
mean, fill
yes.
in the blank,
I
like,
know, I'm
good
teasing.
and great, like bad, people.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I hear
So,
you. I agree with you.
Well, yeah, and people, it's easier for people to judge others because, we don't want to be judged. But I always talk about, someone who lives in a nice house and, wears some nice red lipstick and a nice pair of shoes doesn't need to show any of their stuff that they've done, any mistakes. But then you see someone dressed in prison,
Mhm.
khakis with, looking the same as all the other women. It's just like pure judgment or
mhm.
not. So the ones that are judging are the ones that have stuff inside them. I believe it.
Can I
I've experienced it.
challenge either of you? Because I'm challenging
Yes,
myself
go
right
for it.
now about, do you feel like getting in trouble, being incarcerated, however that happened, but you're both is different, but in a way was one of the best things that ever happened to you, for you to become the whole best version that you have to offer the world?
Mm.
Is that a, like, do you think that? Would you
I've
agree with that?
I
Like,
want to hear what Adam
could you
says
have
about that.
been the person you are today without that
No.
experience?
You can't, it's hard to make the argument either way,
Yeah.
right? Because we don't know. Like, I can say that, yeah, because I've had multiple felonies and misdemeanors and been in and out of the courts and treatment and stuff, that, like, one day I just woke up, and because of all that stuff I've been through, I am who I am today, right? Yeah, sure. Well, like, yeah, I'm a better person today because of all the stuff that happened to me, right? It's the same thing I tell my, the guys that I mentor or sponsor, is that, like, with the expectations thing, right? Like they'll come to me and be like, oh, this guy just doesn't get it. Like, I wish he would just get it and he would just stay sober, right? And really what it is that like, if I'm going to take credit for like my life because of my failures, then all the successes have also created me, right? And so there has been success before.
Yeah.
And what would have happened if I would have had more success? Like,
Mhm.
where would I be at today if school would have, like, if I would have responded to school the way I could? Then I would have been a guy with a good personality and a degree. You know what I
Ooh.
mean? So I think it's an apples and oranges kind of like discussion, because
I
I
like
don't
that.
know. I don't know how I would have turned out if I would have responded quicker earlier in my life. I might even be in a better place. Let me end it with this. A guy was went to, it's kind of risque, kind of what I'm about to like. It's
Okay, let's get our
Clutch my pearls,
coconut
clutch
water.
my pearls, and cover my
Go,
ears.
go get
Okay.
your water. Okay, go ahead.
So
Okay, we're listening.
this homeless guy. This is a story I tell in the jail, right? This homeless guy goes up to this house. He sees a help wanted sign on the door of the house, and he needs a job. He's homeless. He has no money. Blah blah blah. So he goes and knocks on the door. A woman, beautiful woman, answers the door, and he's holding the help wanted sign, and she looks at him and she invites him in, asks him a couple questions, and identifies he's not the guy that they're looking for. They're looking for an accountant, right? He's not. He has like a 8th grade education. Blah blah blah. And she's like, what? Take some of these apples and just be on your way, right? And so he goes out he grabs the best apples, right? There's like 30 of them there. He feels them all. It takes the best apples, like 5 of them, and he goes out and he sits on the street corner and he puts his apples out on his coat. And this guy in a 3-piece suit's walking by, and he's hungry. And he said, "I'll give you $2 for that apple." And he's like, okay, so gives him $2, he gives him the apple. Another guy walks by, sells the rest of the apples, right? Most guys would just go spend the money, right? But he doubles down. He goes to a grocery store and he buys, whatever amount of apples, and he keeps this thing going on. 30 years later, becomes the CEO, the largest apple distributing factory in the United States. And they're having conversations of being bought out by a foreign company, right, for a lot of money, and it was going to be his exit. And so his attorney comes to him and says, "Hey, I need you to read through this stuff and sign off on it." And the guy says, "Well, what does it say?" He's like, "Well, you should probably, like, I'll give you a summary, but you should read the fine print just so you're." He's like, "Well, I can't read." And he was like, "What?" And he was like, and the CEO is kind of giddy by, he's like, I can't really do math either. It's like, and he's like, "Man, where would you be today if you like knew how to read and had a degree and all that stuff?" And he's like, "Well, I'd probably be an accountant at a whorehouse."
Yeah.
And the whole point of the story is that, like, I
Yes.
think we're here because we're supposed to be here, right?
Mm.
Like I could have went left, I could have went right, I could have, like, they could have sentenced me to longer time, but I think eventually I am who I am, and I probably would have made it to this point regardless of whatever direction I went.
I like that. What?
I will say for myself, I had to crash and burn
Hmm.
and have a public situation to find my authentic self. I had success.
It was different.
I had my intelligence and my business mind and my businesses, and I had the things. I was successful, but I needed to crash and burn to find the authentic version of me. And so although I'm still doing a lot of those same things different now, it's like such a better version of myself showing up, such a free version and authentic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
Like,
you don't think you would have gotten there without the crash?
I don't think, I think what happened was the best
Mhm.
thing.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I wish people didn't get hurt around me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
other than that, I have a lot of gratitude for crashing and burning.
Yeah.
I can say
I'm
it.
still not ready.
I
to
know
say
you're
that.
not, but I can say
I
it.
think
could
it's
have found
harder-
another way
it's-
around.
I'm not
It's-
celebrating it, but I can accept
Yeah.
it
I
and
understand.
have freedom from it.
I understand.
Yeah. I think it's harder for people like myself to like accept it, right? Because there's a lot of trauma that came with it.
Yeah, me too.
Right.
Yeah.
Like being in solitary confinement to a lot of like stuff that I think is literally ruining people's lives when it comes to mugshots and it comes to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if I
Stigma.
accept that, then I'm saying that mugshots are okay. You know what I mean? Or I'm saying that the way that the prison system
I hear that.
is running is the way it's supposed to run. And I think that's why it's so hard for us to say that, because I know guys who came from really great homes that
Mm-hmm.
turned out to be severe alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know guys that came from really bad homes, right, that didn't.
Yeah.
And I know vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by like apples and oranges, right? Is that like it's too hard to like have the discussion and side on either side because I've seen so many variables.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like putting a label on something, it's the same thing. We don't want to put a label on something. We don't want to put a box and wrap it up and say, now here, that.
Yeah.
So there's so much pain involved with it that, maybe when I'm 82, I'll say, yes, that was good. But I understand I am more
agree-
free than I've ever been in my whole life.
Yeah, I will agree with you though that you needed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like when I think one of the worst things that's happened in my type of work, right? Peer supports, mental health advocates, or reentry specialists is that they tend, I'm not saying you're doing this by any means, they tend to use their experience as law, right? And I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of people get hurt by
Mm.
by people using their experience both as like a helping hand and as a sword. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Meaning that like that there's only one platform or there's only one, like if a guy comes in and says, that AA helped me
Mm-hmm.
get me where I'm at today, or a Christian comes in and says,
Mm-hmm.
the Bible has got me to where I'm at today, and then they're only gonna like that's the only way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then it gets to be kind of harmful.
Well, we say sometimes like, how do we help and come alongside somebody so that they maybe don't have to crash and burn, that maybe that doesn't have to be the way, that they have a transformation or an elevation of who they are, or a freedom from the things that they've done. Or
Especially with the young person, I'm always like, oh, come on, what can I do for you? I'll do whatever I can.
Treatment
to make you
centers,
feel good.
like treatment centers and people in recovery do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They'll say things like if someone goes to treatment and then they get out and then they end up on the most wanted list or something, I guarantee you everyone around that person that's in that world will say, well, he must not have hit bottom yet.
Yeah, they will.
You know what I mean?
I don't
But the
think
thing for
bottoms-
guys like me, they don't exist.
Yeah.
Bottoms don't exist. So the crash and burn, like for me, because I've crashed and burned, like there was like it didn't burn enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't
Mhm.
crash hard enough because
Yeah.
all the times that I thought it was going to work, like my bottom, my crash, my burn, man, something shiny came across and I justified it
Mhm.
every single
I
time.
understand. Yes,
That's
I
good.
understand that.
I think what kind of coming out of this part of this, what we talk about a lot is there's always more to the story. And if anything, from our two different experiences, the thing we talk a lot about is just being curious. It's fascinating to be curious about another human and
In their
story, their journey, their variables. We often talk about everyone's variables are so different. The town you grew up in, is it a blue state or red state? Is it the family, the economics, there's so many variables in everybody's life. And for us to judge someone where they grew up so different than I grew up, how are they supposed to have the exact same path as me? And so we just find ourselves extremely curious just to understand people's, or not even understand all the time, but just to kind of hear it and be like, yeah,
But don't you think, Adam, that that it's easier to be curious and walk alongside someone when you're already transparent in your own world? It's harder for, I think, somebody that is still holding a lot of stuff tight to walk alongside somebody because it's too much will bounce off their triggers and trauma.
That's good.
Okay.
That's
I see what you're
good.
saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I got sober 9 years ago. Okay. Prior to that, I was going in and out of recovery meetings, treatment, jail for 20 years.
Mm.
Right. I've been trying to get sober since I was 18. I didn't sober up until I was 31
That's a long
somewhere.
time to go
Yeah.
through that. That's a
And I
lot of heartache.
Yeah, and I think there was only a few year period where I was like completely like not trying to get sober, right?
Mm.
But the other years, like through that whole time, I would get 3 months, 6 months. I even got a
Mm.
year once, right? But I would always go back. Um, the thing that it was a combination of things that I think made it work,
Mm.
right? Like when the day came when I sobered up, it if you would have asked me if I was going to stay sober long term, I would have said no,
Mm.
right? But the one thing that I did do, like we had our house meetings tonight with all the guys, and I told them, I was like, listen, the only thing that I did that was good through that whole time, right? Well, not good, but that worked was the effort, right? No matter what, if I
Mm.
relapsed or I caught another charge or whatever I did, I always the next day
Mm.
started putting forth the effort, right, to not do it again. And sometimes it lasted 3 months, sometimes it lasted 6 months, and then I would have a little blip, right?
Mhm.
And then I'd get back on the horse and do it again. The thing that really did it for me was I stopped caring about what other people thought,
Mm.
Yeah.
right? Because that was a hard one for me because I would go to meetings or hang out with people in recovery and they were all staying sober and I was relapsing, right? Or whenever I was meeting with my mental health like counselor or whatever, I just felt a level of like like a authority, you know what I
Yep.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And really all I really longed for was what every guy coming out of jail or prison longs for is love,
Yep.
right? And grace. Like I know that I'm different, right? I've built it up in my head that even in recovery circles where I identify with people, I had like I was the slipper,
Mm.
right? I was the
Yeah.
relapser or whatever. So everywhere I went, I felt like I was on the outside looking in, you
Mm.
know? And so finally I met this guy, Fred, and he I got a job at this place called High Point, and I think he was like a year and so pretty early, right? And we connected, like not like a sponsor, right?
Mm. Like,
Not like anything other than he just wanted to be helpful and he wanted to be my friend, right? And it was a little weird at first because I was just like, why do you want to like
yeah.
everybody else hates me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this guy, like whatever. So I got this job and he committed to give me a ride back and forth to work, right? And
Mm.
I didn't know how I was going to get there. I was 11 miles from the company that hired me. And he was like, well, I'll pick you up. And so then he picked me up that first day, brought me to work. After work, he picked me up. And then I was like, I'm trying to be like that hustler. I'm like, yeah, I got to go to work tomorrow. I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, like,
Yeah. Oh,
and so he just,
yeah.
he just kept picking me up for 3 months,
Oh.
Monday through Friday.
Wow.
And he lived not far from where I was working. So
Mm.
it was like way out of his way. And so he went like 11 miles out of town, picked me up, brought me back. And then after work, I mean, he added 44 miles to his daily life and
Mm.
expected nothing
Mm.
in return. And the day he couldn't do it anymore was the day I got a car and a license.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
But
Yes.
even that, even the
Perfect.
rides, like it was all connection.
Mm-hmm.
He used the opportunity to talk to me about recovery, to talk to me about how work was going. He
Hmm.
just like treated me like a brother. You know what I mean? And ever since that's happened, like that good thing
Mhm.
set the tone to who I am today.
That's beautiful.
I love that. And it's so cool to, and I'm sure you will never forget that person, that feeling that he gave you, that just the friendship and relationship, instead of like, well, here's what you need to do. It's like, let's just be friends. I
Mhm.
Yeah.
always say that I I think that we know as individuals, we know ourselves and we know what's going to work and what's not going to work. We have all the answers already inside. And if someone could just come alongside us and say, I see you, you're capable. What can I do for you? And not need something in return is way more profound than other things. So yes,
Mhm.
that's a beautiful, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons you had that instinct to help that guy
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
drive. You know, you're like, well, okay,
Well, and
it
it's
was a good
perspective
example.
too, right? Like when you picked up the gentleman that you had that story about, and then you just shared the story you just did, it's perspective because the facts, the foundation of the story is the same no matter how you think about it or look at it. Somebody picked somebody up and took them far across town. Somebody did 44 miles that's the facts, but you can look at it you can look at it as, I want to love on this person. I don't care how late I am, or I want to take the opportunity for this to be a connection time rather than, oh, gas money and it's far
Service.
and it's
How many people just do
perspective.
service without wanting anything back? But yet service is the thing, is
Yep.
the thing that's going to give you the most joy.
Yeah.
Mhm. We
I
have
mean,
all the
Yeah.
answers in our community.
yeah.
We do. We have it. Like if we had people who this is where I'll agree with you on it. The crash and burn, right? It that crash and burn put me in a position to be helpful, right?
Mhm.
Because of that, because of all the trauma, because of all the isolation and the depression and stuff like that, when you put me in a room with someone who's going through that,
Mhm.
I can appeal to them and usually win them over within a few hours, which would take probably doctors years
Yeah.
to do, right?
Mm.
Because they're just detached, right? We talked a little bit earlier about being the CEO, right? Like most CEOs are detached from what it's like to be a service provider at a lower level, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
They probably haven't even done the work that those people are doing
Yeah.
in years and years and years. And even when they did do that kind of work, if they did that kind of work, um, it wasn't the same as someone who's been through it trying to help people go through it,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
I
Love
love
that.
that. We have all the answers in our community already, no matter
Mhm.
what community you're in.
Mhm.
So stop complaining. You know, anyone that complains, that's one of the things that gets on my nerves. It's like, stop complaining, close your mouth and go do something. Be of service, and others will
Mhm.
help you.
Not all people want to get out of their bubble, get out of their
Yeah.
comfort zone, go talk to the person that makes them uncomfortable or they're unfamiliar with.
Mhm.
But
I
we
don't
all,
think that's so yes.
but
Like
I was going to
there's
say, but we all want good neighbors. We all want a healthy community. We all want to feel safe at the grocery
Mhm.
store. But what are
Mhm.
we specifically doing to connect with the people or help or serve the people that we think are impacting us as neighbors and community
or
members?
Or
what are you doing to help the people,
That's
right?
it.
mm,
Maybe that's your role, or people or who are in their bubble, is that
yeah.
like they're not always the right people to put with the people,
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
right?
yes,
And
yes.
so like their role usually consists of like helping the helper,
Yeah.
right? Like whether it's
I love that.
like
Hmm.
whether it's like we all have different roles and we all bring gifts to the table, right? Some
Mm-hmm.
are really
I
good at
like that.
marketing, some are really good
Hmm.
at
Yes,
administration,
yes.
and
I
so
like that.
having the
Yep.
person, it's kind of like a pastor of pastors, or like a well, a helper of the helper, right? Like I might not be the person with the experience that can sit at the coffee table and nonchalantly have a conversation and be super comfortable and give a bunch of experience, but I
Yes.
know the guy who is. What can I do to serve him and
Mm.
make his life a little easier so that he can open up the door for more people?
Love it.
That's golden. I love that. I don't
We're
know
all
why I've never
connected.
really thought of it
We're
in
all
that way.
connected.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, good. I need to think about that for a second. I really like that.
Yeah. I think about
So
Recovery
everyone has.
Cafe where you work. I can make coffee for everybody,
Mhm.
but you can lead the circles.
Yeah, and that's what we do. It's just
Yes.
side by side, we walk alongside. But I do like the fact that everyone has a place because they can help with funding or marketing or a million different ways and still be as effective.
And don't we love
and
to
helpful.
celebrate that when we see it, when we see the
Mhm.
people around us? Because sometimes that person that's doing those things needs to also hear, like, I see you. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Even
It's a lot.
how big or small the job may seem or the connection may seem.
Yeah,
I
and
I
like
just,
I
think one
said,
of the big pieces though to identify is that the person, if left unchecked and doesn't understand what their role is and is jealous of the other role, usually turns into being a tough on crime person.
be careful of the tough on crime
that was a
person. And
really good segue,
that was
Adam.
that was
You
great.
know, we wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
That was magical.
Yeah.
Wow, you're like
Yeah.
a
Allison's
wizard.
impressed.
I'm here all week, folks.
All right.
Okay, we are running low on time, and I would love for us
Yeah.
to touch on this concept of, we hear tough on crime. It is such a phrase that's thrown around.
Tagline.
But it doesn't always mean what the person unaffected, maybe what's the word, non-system impacted person might think it is. So would you dive into that one, Adam?
Yeah. So tough on crime, usually it was born out of violence, right? There was a violent nature happening with guns and violent crime and stuff in America, right? And so the original intention was that we were going to get tough on crime and lock people up that were violent, right? What it's turned into is been the war on drugs, which is actually the war on poverty.
Yes.
War on people of color, right? It's everything except for what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so the way that I see it is that when people say that we're going to get tough on crime, what they're saying is that we want to lock people up for longer, right?
Yeah.
Because they think that it will fix the problem, right? If you take someone out, there's only one scenario that backs that up that I've came across, and it's usually people who have been convicted of murder, right? And they spend enough time in prison to where they matured before they got out, right? That's the only, like, the lowest recidivism rate you're going to see is people who have been convicted of such a heinous, public shamed guilt, like
Unforgiving.
conviction, unforgiving,
Worst of the
and
worst.
yeah, worst of the worst. And they spend 30 to 40 years in jail, and then they get out, and they're usually have matured so much that the idea of even committing a crime is like, it isn't because they spent time in prison, it's because they've matured.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the only time that I see that scenario, right? That it actually could back up a tough on crime approach. 99% of the other time, it makes things worse, right? Because they're sending people to the same amount of, like, going to prison for murder for 25 years and going to prison for drugs for 25 years are two different, like, usually the person that's going there for drugs is going to come out extremely resentful, right?
Right.
Because it's like an addiction, or it was mental health, or it was something that was whatever, right? And so it makes people worse the longer they stay in there, right? Because it's not justifiable. A human brain cannot comprehend serving 40 years in prison for drugs.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Tiny
or
amount
like
of drugs.
Kendrick, 400 months.
Tiny
For
amount.
nonviolent, no one
Yeah,
hurt.
and that's what tough on crime was, is that it basically treated everybody like murderers.
Right.
Right. And I'll be honest, like, I've worked with a couple guys who've committed that crime after getting out of prison, and they were literally the easiest low-hanging fruit of people I've ever met.
Us
The
too.
ones
Us too are people, the ones that
the ones I've had the hardest time with are people who are severely addicted. They had no treatment, right? They got thrown in prison for a bunch of years, and then they got out, and they're the most heartbreaking because they end up doing a ton of dope when they get out, and then they usually overdose and die.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
because the drugs are the thing that help them cope with their pain. And so
Mhm.
if their pain was not addressed in any sort of way, which it isn't in prison, there's
Mhm.
no rehabilitation, then they're going to come out and they're going to, of course, human's going to go to that thing that's going to help them with their pain. And then that's
Mhm.
shame and guilt on top of
Well,
it.
and then the collateral damage of the
The
families and the
family and the
children and the
kids, yeah.
communities, and then the whole negative cycle that follows through that, which just
Yeah.
So how do
frustrating.
you unravel
Yeah.
the tough
Yeah. So
on crime in the public?
we do the same thing that we were doing earlier about our own motives, right? You ask why, right? That why is literally the most powerful question you can ask to any philosophy or idea ever. Because if you can get people to
Yeah.
address why they believe what they believe to be real, and is it really real, right? And it's not just some made up stat or some Facebook comment or
Yes.
whatever, right?
Something they're
Like if you
parroting.
yeah, and so you just ask a ton of questions like, why
Yeah.
do you believe that?
Yeah.
How did you come to that conclusion? And so what I usually do, like on Tough on Crime, is that I've narrowed it down to is that they believe that they're pro-victim, right?
Yeah.
They really, really believe that being tough on crime gives better rights to victims, right? What I've learned is that they've not done any studies, right? And they've not really thought it through because most people, when you get tough on crime, it creates a violent nature between two parties,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you introduce a big brother into it to beat up that brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then he comes out and gets back addicted to drugs and falls back into the thing, and then he commits another crime, and then there's another victim, right?
Yep.
Tough on crime is a band-aid approach to justice, right? Now, rehabilitation, right?
Mhm.
Treatment, right? Getting to the core of the problem and doing trauma recovery and doing, recovery meetings and peer supports and helping them build a community and connection around them
Mhm.
makes less victims, but it takes longer to get the result because tough on crime creates a result like that.
But see,
They're
most
in
people,
prison. That's the result.
yes,
You know?
but most people on the that I think would think that there's rehabilitation in the prison. No, and most people say, yeah, there should be. So how
Mhm,
do we go from yes, there should be to actually getting it?
mhm,
Because people want other people to do well, I think, but so there's so much that goes on in prison and so much about it that most people that are people that listen are like, what? They're
mhm,
shocked at what goes on. So it's like because they don't know, then they just kind of out of sight because it's too ridiculous to even think about unless it starts trickling down to now with, women's rights and women
mhm.
being a possible felon if they get an abortion. But now it's like, what's happening? It's like, yes, those kinds of things are happening all the time, every day in different populations. There's
Mhm.
my little thing,
Get it,
but
girl.
it
Yeah.
doesn't really affect anybody, a lot of people, or until it does, then that's when you get, hyped up about it. So
Mhm.
that's
Well,
a
it
big
creates a
stigma.
lot of like the tough on crime, like we were talking earlier. Like if you look at it from the beginning of the river until the outcome into the ocean, right? Like the beginning of the river, it's and so this analogy is that like I'm walking up to a river and there's a goddamn baby in the river, right? And it's floating down the river, and I'm like, what the hell? So I grab the baby and I pull it out, right? And I'm like, oh, at least you're saved.
Yeah.
And then I look and there's two more coming, and then there's a fourth one, and everyone's so fixated on the idea of because of the emotional nature that comes with it to just save the babies. And then some guy comes across and he's like, who's throwing the babies in the river?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's go up the river,
Yeah.
right? And so people usually use
For-
that argument as that we need to work on preventative, right, with youth. But I think you
yeah.
can do both, right? You can
I
respond and do prevention.
For sure.
I
For
agree.
sure.
And that's a good analogy
Yeah.
too. Yes. Yeah, that's what I always say about clemency. It's like, yay, they got clemency, but why in the hell did they get 30 years with the same judge?
Yeah.
Four people have 30 years with the same judge. Like, is anybody talking about that guy? No,
Right.
Yeah.
because we can't.
Or the
Yeah, there's
whole legislation
Well, we're talking about it.
and
If there's anything we can all do is we can talk about it, and we can.
that they're doing me back. Oh, did I lose
Oh,
Oh, Adam, right
you?
when you get ready to hit your home run, you
right
land
when
on
you slid
second
into
base.
home plate, it
Oh,
stopped.
man.
Well, we're gonna have
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah, but
We
we
get,
will have
I think
information
we get
about your,
the point though. Definitely go
yeah.
up the river and stop. Just focus. Yes, that was really
Yeah.
good though.
Mhm.
We,
I know we
I
don't have any
told
more
you, I
time.
told you when we started, we we're
I
gonna run
know,
out
it
of
goes
time
by
really
fast.
fast.
Yeah.
But I love
Um,
everything that we talked about. It was really
Yeah.
important and different than we've had, and so
Yeah,
it's-
thank you for doing the work and showing up like in the middle of it all. Some people, like you said, can be maybe at the CEO level, but some of us can do both, and we can get in the mix and be shoulder to shoulder and working with and learning stories and being curious and making a difference that way also. And
yeah, and I want to elevate people that are, going into politics for lack of a better word, because I think it's super important, to learn that you can actually make a difference in your county is huge, and that kind of that opens the road a little bit for other people coming up and saying, "Oh, I can't get a job." It's like, well, you can actually run for.
well, and we love that
county
you're running for
commission.
a public office for
Yeah,
that exact
that's what I
reason.
mean.
Yeah, is
Public
that you
office.
like who else would you want in that situation than somebody that's experienced and
All of
witnessed
it.
all of those things? Like you're the perfect person for that.
So we
because
vote for
yes.
Adam Martin.
We do. You have our vote. We're going to move to North Dakota and you have our vote.
It's warmer there than here, so yes, let's do that.
Can we finish with our speed round, Adam? And just a little fun?
Just a couple questions real quick.
Yeah, as long as we can, because it's been really spotty on the connection. So hopefully we can get through this.
Okay, well, we'll just do this
Was
for.
it spotty on us, on our end?
Yeah, like this last like 2 minutes, I'm really glad that you
Mm.
guys just kept talking, because I don't think
Okay.
if you were asking me questions, I would have bombed it.
Oh,
No,
shoot.
we were
Okay.
talking about you in great ways.
Yeah, appreciate
And
it.
you just
Okay.
smiled and you nodded, so you did
Mhm.
perfect.
Okay, these questions. So, are you mountains or beaches?
Beaches.
Okay.
Mm.
Are you a morning or night person?
Ooh, I am both.
Both. You know what? I thought you would say that. That's been because you
Yeah,
got a
I
lot of stuff to
love
do.
I love my morning like coffee by myself, and I love staying up late and watching movies.
So, are you someone that journals?
No.
No. Okay. What emotion gets you in the most trouble?
Oh, what emotion? Anger. Yep.
Okay.
What's yours?
Anger. What emotion? Damn, I'm not sure. What emotion gets me in the most trouble? I'm not sure. I'm not. I'll have to think about that. Let's see. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would that be?
Man. Martin Luther King.
Ah, good one.
And I think my emotion would be frustration.
It would be the reason I would want. God, I feel like I need to. Why I would have dinner with Martin Luther King?
Yeah.
Oh, because I just want to see his reaction to the world today compared to when he gave his famous speech.
What do you
And if
think
that's
he
what
would
he-
say? What do you think he would think?
Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't think he would see any difference compared to now than when he did his thing.
Probably not.
I would agree.
It's just different, but not
That's
better.
sad, but you know what? We are going to make some changes. Us three.
Mhm.
It's true.
Us three. Yes, I agree.
I know. It's
Adam, we loved having you. Sorry it got funky at the end there, but we loved having you. You're awesome, and welcome to the Freedom Exchange family, because
Yes.
we never leave our guests alone. So
Yes.
you've got us
So you'll be
forever
hearing
now.
from us. I'm wondering how your campaign's going.
Yes, you got our vote. We can't wait to hear when you
Yes.
win. All right. Well, thank you for your time. You can go out of the garage now. It's bedtime.
And then we will put
Yes.
all your
Yes.
information on our show notes, and go from there.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam.
Awesome.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
ladies. Appreciate the time.
Thank
Bye.
you.